like Malibu, with them dropping out of your life.
Midnight Club Los Angeles is a racing game, and a very good one. And today, I'm going to insult your intelligence by presuming that you don't know about any of the things that I'm about to discuss in this video. So, here are a couple of facts about Midnight Club Los Angeles that you probably did not know about. A feature that would allow police dispatchers to recite the license plate of a player's vehicle was cut. If you had set your license plate text to any of these 26 predetermined names, then you would have heard them be read out on the police radio scanner.
George, Henry, Adam, Zebra, license Midnight Club.
Any and all code for this mechanic seemingly has been scrapped, with the only proof of its existence being a bunch of unused voice lines. What is particularly of note regarding this omitted feature is that there was going to be an Easter egg associated with it. There are lines for the police dispatcher reading out the plate, "Need for Speed sucks."
License Need for Speed sucks. License plate Need for Speed sucks.
Need for Speed sucks. License plate Need for Speed sucks.
Considering the state of the Need for Speed franchise during this time, I'd say that's a pretty fair assessment. It would have been a fun jab at the time anyway, inferior series of games, akin to the stuff Rockstar would do in the 3D era GTA games where they would poke fun at driver and true crime. There are more things the unused dispatch lines reveal, such as the removal of a lot of vehicles. Police dispatch dialogue exists for when the player drove a Cadillac Escalade,
Vehicle's a late model Cadillac Escalade.
Toyota Supra,
Vehicle is a Toyota Supra.
a non-specific 2- or 4-door Honda,
Vehicle is a Honda. Vehicle is a Honda 2-door. Vehicle is a Honda 4-door.
an Infiniti,
Vehicle is an Infiniti. Vehicle is an Infiniti 2-door.
most likely the G35, which was featured in the third game, a non-specific 2- or 4-door Lexus,
Vehicle is a Lexus. Vehicle is a Lexus 2-door. Vehicle is a Lexus 4-door.
a Chevrolet Monte Carlo,
Vehicle is a Chevy Monte Carlo.
a second-generation Mazda RX-7, which would go on to be replaced by a third-gen model in the final game,
Vehicle is a 1990 Mazda RX-7.
a Humvee, interestingly enough,
Vehicle is a Humvee.
and a Chopper.
Vehicle is a Chopper.
The Chopper brand Hot Match, which made their debut in the previous game, is actually mentioned in MCLA's internal vehicle list, but no model, or model name for that matter, is present. Could these vehicles have been placeholders? Perhaps. I reckon early on into the game's development, they probably just copied a lot of Midnight Club 3's models and used them temporarily. But it certainly is interesting that they would go out of their way to have unique police scanner dialogue be voiced for these particular vehicles. I mean, the police dispatch dialogue most likely was something they took care of pretty late into the game's development cycle. Voice acting, especially in a game where VA is quite trivial, at least in the grander scheme of things, tends to be one of the things taken care of last in a game's development process. Perhaps Rockstar at least were planning on acquiring the licenses for these brands and maybe include them as DLC later on, as the police scanner dialogue pertaining to some of the DLC cars was left within the game's Day 1 version as well. Sadly, there seems to be no other data left over for these cars. The Day 1 version of Midnight Club LA is significantly more challenging than the patched or complete edition version, and many changes were made to make its difficulty model more streamlined after tons of complaints by reviewers and players alike. In December of 2008, a patch rolled out that would make crucial alterations to the game's difficulty curve, most predominantly in its introductory segments. The rubber banding is a lot more potent in the original version, and the AI in general is a lot quicker. Many of the races in the first sections of the game especially feel more reliant on luck as a result. Alongside that, the time trial requirements were altered as well, with some requirements being decreased by upwards of 30 seconds. Many of the time trial requirements are just insane in the original version, and necessitate the cleanest, most optimized driving possible. Whether this update was an improvement or a detriment to the game experience is up to you. Personally, I do prefer the original game's difficulty model. Due to the raising of the skill ceiling, races now evoke more excitement and engagement. Narrowly passing a time trial with only milliseconds to spare is absolutely exhilarating. This is the kind of stuff you won't find in the patched version. depending on your skill level at least. I personally am of the conviction that the Complete Edition was made way too easy. I had rounded off my first 100% playthrough of MCLA on the updated version, and that as a whole only netted me 7 restarts. It's almost insultingly easy, especially when compared to the earlier entries in the series. When I went back to the original, I had already doubled that statistic within the first half of the game, which should give you an idea. This all could have been circumvented if the game just had a difficulty slider. You know, the same goddamn difficulty slider they have for wager, tournament, and payback events? Yeah, instead of just implementing that, let's just sanitize the entire game for everybody. How counterintuitive. Back in 2019, a group of people discovered Gran Turismo 5 had a hidden but fully functional LAN mode. It worked completely as intended and was just commented out in its menu data. Let's say GT5 wasn't the only PS3 racing game to do something like this. Midnight Club LA 2 has a hidden LAN mode that functions just fine. It works through Xlink Kai, and you can even connect with others on RPCS3, although it runs like dog shit on that emulator, so good luck trying to find anybody to play. All it took to re-enable this mode was to undo the commenting out of its menu entry in the menu's XML file. It's unknown as to why Rockstar decided to just disable this feature, but hey, this does mean online play is finally back on the PS Triple.
What the hell am I doing drinking in LA at 26?
The Japanese version of Midnight Club Los Angeles, for whatever reason, contains leftovers from an earlier revision of the South Central expansion. These include early mission scripts, files related to city lighting and AI pathing, and an early version of the string table. The early South Central string table in particular reveals to us Rockstar's affinity for hardcore 90s gangster rap. It seems this was a placeholder playlist specifically exclusive to South Central developer builds, curated before Rockstar would go out and actually license music for the DLC. It's your pretty run-of-the-mill best of 90s gangster rap compilation, with some absolute classics at the helm. NWA's Fuck the Police and Straight Outta Compton, 2 of America's Most Wanted by Tupac, which is one of my favorite Pac songs, Dr. Dre's Still DRE and Nothing But a G-Fang, and Snoop Dogg's Gin and Juice, just to name a few. There also are more original picks, like the Farsight's Oh Shit, fucking classic by the way, Public Enemy's Welcome to the Terrordrome, and the actual OG of gangster rap, Ice-T, with Original Gangster. Many of these songs have actually appeared in previous and preceding Rockstar titles. Still DRE and Gin and Juice would be included onto GTA 5 soundtrack, whereas NWA's Always Into Something, Ice Cube's Check Yourself, and 3 out of the 6 Dre tracks made their video game debut in GTA San Andreas. It is very evident looking at the amount of undoubtedly expensive tracks presented that these never were meant to be licensed for the release game, but merely just songs some developer at Rockstar San Diego liked. What I do find interesting though is that the text strings for the songs with explicit names actually are censored. If it never was meant to be seen by members of the public and press, then what would even be the point of censoring these song names anyway? Then again, they are censored really poorly. For instance, Fuck the Police is just called F, and NWA with their song F. Maybe there's like some bureaucratic reasoning for it that I don't get, even though the internal labels for those strings are not censored at all. So, it's pretty strange. Upon giving it some thought, I do think these songs could have worked within the context of the South Central expansion. And I do wish they actually went out and licensed some of these songs. Considering how integral South Central is to 90s gangster rap culture, try finding a 90s hardcore gangster rap track that doesn't shout Crenshaw out. And the ways Rockstar even have hinted at that culture with some of the cars they decided to include within the update, like the 64 Impala. I mean, come on, you know what y'all were doing. The characters and the slang that they use, the vehicles, and just the location in itself is deeply rooted within that particular piece of hip-hop culture. And so, taking that into account, yes, I do think Still DRE would have worked wonderfully when driving up and down Crenshaw with a hydraulic-equipped 64 Impala. Not to mention, the soundtrack already has a strong West Coast hip-hop presence. I mean, there's an entire genre dedicated to it in the game. To further add to that, There are literal classic hip-hop tribute songs within the soundtrack, such as All in One by Rex, which pretty much acts as a Biggie and Tupac homage. I don't think hearing Tupac alongside the game and WC would have been that far-fetched. There don't seem to be many differences within the mission scripts as far as I could tell, but we actually do already have an earlier revision of the South Central mission code, as they were left within the game's Day 1 version, believe it or not. If you'll give enough of a shit, I could perhaps do a playthrough of South Central with its alpha mission scripts. The last thing truly of note that was left within this early South Central data are references to the long-lost Midnight Club 5. City.lst, a file that actually has been used since the Midtown Madness era, lists a bunch of test cities that weren't included onto the disk. Things like GTA 4's Liberty City, a London map, and 3 areas pertaining to a project named MC5. As a reminder, the city list file was left within the game's Day 1 version. The final and release build of MCLA was compiled on the 26th of September of 2008, which insinuates Midnight Club 5 being prototyped long before Midnight Club LA even hit store shelves. Although definitely not unheard of, it in particular being a method EA Black Box tended to practice, it isn't how Rockstar normally develops their games. So it's quite interesting to see that Midnight Club 5's inception dates back to even before Midnight Club LA was out of the oven. There's more to this file though, as a city named LV is mentioned as well. LV, without a shred of a doubt, is an acronym for Las Vegas. We actually know a game named Midnight Club Las Vegas was in development at one point thanks to a now deleted developer portfolio, and this location could very well be pertaining towards that cancelled game in particular. You wanna know what's really strange? This city is in fact referenced in the code for, ready for it? Midnight Club 3. This city's origins date back to even before Midnight Club LA was conceived. And so, after wrapping my head around this, here are some of the theories I had managed to couple up. 1. Midnight Club Las Vegas was a project in the pipeline around the time Midnight Club 3 was worked on, but then shelved for Midnight Club Los Angeles, then subsequently revived as a possible successor to MCLA. 2. Las Vegas was planned to be a 4th city in Midnight Club 3, and not meant to be part of its own game. It was then cut from MC3 and brought back later in order to be part of this new Midnight Club Las Vegas project. Or 3, and this one is the least exciting, it simply was an old map Rockstar could use as a test bed for Midnight Club LA. The thing is though, we have multiple testimonials from developers and other credible sources who state Midnight Club 5 was meant to take place in London, not Las Vegas, and therefore, it is interesting that London is mentioned in this city list file too. It is very likely it started out in Vegas, but then had its location changed to London later on. Probably due to Vegas being a rather weird successor, considering how not too dissimilar it is to Los Angeles. I definitely do not think they were planning on bundling both Las Vegas and London into a single game. That simply would have been far too ambitious, even for Rockstar standards, and with the level of detail they most likely were aiming for, probably impossible given the hardware of the time. Developer builds of MCLA had support for the parsing of command lines. There are around 550 commands and they all affect several facets of the game. The function that handles the parsing of said command lines has been stripped in the release version, meaning you can't actually pass commands through the game itself. But the functionality for many of the commands themselves still work and can be enabled manually, and some are pretty interesting. Test trailers causes only trucks with trailers to spawn in the map. Demo will force you into the demo mode that I had discussed in a previous video. Interesting thing is, instead of only spawning you into the Celine, it now can arbitrarily place you into one of 9 vehicles. Some of the cars were actually spotted in footage of a pre-release build taken at PAX 2008. The command rear view will enable a totally unused rear view mirror, which, if you're not aware, was completely absent from MCLA, despite it having been in the series since the second game. Instead of merely just rendering the taillights of opponents behind you, like the older games, it instead would have behaved similarly to the rearview mirror seen in Need for Speed Most Wanted and Carbon, where the game would render a low-poly duplicate of the world behind you. Initially, I had presumed that this was some developer exclusive feature, as in free mode, it just is this weird misaligned rectangle on the top right of the screen. But doubts concerning that set in once I entered a race. For some reason, in races, the game will render this mirror outline texture that is not seen anywhere else, which definitely makes me question as to whether they had planned a rearview mirror for the player to utilize, but ended up gutting it due to what I presume were hardware limitations. MCLA already suffered from pretty severe texture streaming issues and frame rate instability at launch, so I'd say this is a pretty probable assumption. A shame, as a rearview mirror would have been very helpful during the races. Moving on, no props disables all of the props around the map, no ragdoll disables ragdoll physics entirely, no automatic traffic disables traffic around the map, dev-only races make some developer test races available to select from the arcade mode menu. Again, there's like 500 of these and I couldn't test them all. And some I flat out didn't get working, like frame time, which works in literally any previous Rockstar San Diego game and is meant to display the game's frame rate and frame times on the top of the screen. If any of you watching are more able when it comes to game disassembly, which I'd imagine are a sizable lot of you considering I have the intellect of a pea, do certainly check this stuff out and see what kind of crazy things you can get working. A rumor has been floating around for a couple of years now that Rockstar were planning a Detroit DLC map for the game. This in itself sounds quite ludicrous considering how much effort it would have taken the team to do a faithful recreation of the locale. Not to mention that a Detroit map for a game titled Midnight Club Los Angeles certainly raises eyebrows. And all that as downloadable content? To give some context, the South Central expansion had been in development since around late 2006 and came out in 2009. It took the team almost 3 whole years to release the South Central expansion, and so taking that into context, would it make sense for Rockstar San Diego, who also had their hands tied with the turbulent development of Red Dead Redemption, to also work on a Detroit expansion for MCLA? But okay, I digress. It's about time I put this rumor to rest. The Day 1 version of Midnight Club LA has a bunch of unused preset vehicles left within its files. One of them is a preset for the Lancer Evo 9. This preset has Detroit in its prefix. When certain people found out about the existence of this preset car, they were quick to spread the idea that Rockstar were planning on doing a Detroit DLC, or that Detroit was planned to be the location for the cancelled Midnight Club 5. But no, it simply was just a preset car made for a pre-alpha build that was playable at the 2008 North American International Auto Show, which, bada boom bada bing, Gustavo Fring, is located in Detroit. It's so cold in the deep. There's even footage of the game taken at that very event that shows this same preset Evo. So yeah, Rockstar were never planning on including Detroit. Austrian musician Marcus Kienzel, the artist behind the excellent downtempo and dub-fused tune that is Dandelion, used as the game's theme track, posted something peculiar to his Instagram page 55 weeks ago. In said post, he expressed his excitement over Rockstar apparently relicensing the track for an upcoming remaster. It has been around a year since this post was made, and no sort of leak or any indication Rockstar are or were specifically planning a remaster of MCLA has come to light. The first thing that went through my mind once I read this post was that he saw some fake MCLA Remastered trailer on YouTube that used the track, and from that gauged that Rockstar were gearing up for a remaster his song would be a part of. But that would eventually come to sound very far-fetched with the information I'm about to present. First off, observe his wording. They will use it, as if this trailer is yet to actually be released. Although he doesn't seem to be very fluent in English, so it's possible he maybe meant something else. The reasoning behind my skepticism has to do with two things. One, being that I'm a cynical SOB, and two, artists typically do not get notified of their songs being renegotiated for use in a certain piece of media, which arose doubts as to how and why Mr. Kienzel would even know of the song's relicensing. But the key word here is typically. Whoever has the rights to hand out licensing agreements for the use of the track is dependent on whoever owns the masters to Dundee Lion. In a typical scenario, it is the record label who is in possession of said masters. They then are able to do with the song whatever they see fit, and many record labels do tend to license out their songs to certain properties or media without consulting the original artist first, because they technically aren't obligated to. But there certainly are exceptions to this rule, as there also are labels who do grant their artists the courtesy of prior consultation, which certainly could be what transpired here. Even though Marcus isn't obligated to know of the song's relicensing, Klein Records could have requested his permission beforehand either way. It also could be, however, that Marcus indeed is in possession of his own masters, meaning Rockstar had to directly go through him in order to put forth negotiations. What is for certain, regardless of which scenario is actually factual, is that someone who represented Rockstar Games was out trying to get the track relicensed for a re-release of Midnight Club Los Angeles, post-2021. I find that to be pretty damning evidence pertaining to the existence of a remaster, but not necessarily indicative of one actually ever coming out. Rockstar likes to scrap projects left and right, and considering just how much of an abomination the GTA Fuck You editions were, it's probable that if a remaster was in the works at some point, it probably will have been cancelled by now, or at least put on some form of indefinite hiatus. I had tried contacting Marcus in an attempt to maybe siphon some more information out of him regarding this matter, but never received a response. What a surprise. And if this MCLA remaster is in fact genuine, then you know who are probably preparing nuclear missiles to strike Marcus's place of residence at any moment by now. Oh, and they probably will also take the post down, I guess. Which would be a shot in the foot, considering it will be a way of legitimizing the credibility of said post, but, you know, protect your IP, which has been laying dead and dormant for the past 14 years, and all that, right?
No more parties in LA.
On its 10th anniversary, Midnight Club LA was removed from digital storefronts, and users who owned the game on Xbox One received an update that would go on to remove around 15 songs, which included the fan-favorite Justice remix of Management's Electric Feel, and Beck's, my beloved, Time Bomb. This would spark an immense sense of deja vu, considering it would be the first time Rockstar would do this on the 10th anniversary of a beloved game. Yikes. The fact that the people who purchased Midnight Club LA before its delisting still were subjected to this horrid song removal update is puzzling, considering it wasn't being sold anymore. However, the game would go on to be quietly relisted almost 3 whole years later, the songs still being cut. What you probably don't entirely know of is that it seems like most of these songs ended up being cut due to sheer negligence and incompetence on Rockstar's part. See, I wanted a deeper insight into this situation, and hear the testimonial of someone who actually had one of their songs removed. So, I decided to interview Kid Static, whose song Party Steady would be one of the free DLC exclusive songs that ended up being removed in the update. It was a quite revealing conversation. You ready? Cause here it is. Alright, we are in the building, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the building with the one and only Kid Static from the hip hop collective Yay Big. Plus, Kid Static made a lot of fun, creative alternative hip hop back in the late 2000s. And one of their tracks, Party Steady, was featured in Rockstar Games' Midnight Club Los Angeles, which we're here to discuss today. So my first question to you is, when it came to these alternative hip-hop acts that were emerging in the later 2000s, like Pac Diff and, the Cool Kids, if you want more popular examples, Lupe, and, you guys were relatively underground in that kind of, scene that was still brewing at the time. So it kind of, surprises me how Rockstar, such a huge conglomerate, were able to track you guys down. Not only that, but also pick a one-off song off of a tour-only release, which only was limited to, 100 hard copies? How did that come about?
Yeah. Back in kind of like somewhere between like 07 and 09, I don't remember the exact time, but we had been touring. One of the bands that we toured with was this band called the Meishi. Through the Meishi connection, once we kind of saw how popular it was, we started looking for sync licenses for it, right? So let's say a game company needs music for their game, the company itself isn't the one who looks for the music. They have like a company that they work with that says, we have these musicians in our like stable of music that we have licenses for. And so go through it, figure out something that works. And so long story short, it was just dumb luck, man. We got in the right catalog, and they listened to the stuff we were making, and they were like, hey, we like this, let's put it in the game. We had the right connections, we had the right amount of exposure to be noticed, and we made good music. So if any of those things weren't in place, it wouldn't have come together.
And so, the track is licensed for the game. I mean, how did that feel, just to be part of such a huge license?
It was huge. It was absolutely huge, man. So I knew Rockstar, right? Because I had played, Grand Theft Auto, like since Grand Theft Auto 2, like since very early. And once they started doing the driving games, I'm like, it's not really my thing. But once I started looking into Midnight Club, I found out how many people were fans, right? Especially overseas, like people like absolutely love driving games. Like there's like professional leagues where people do like rally racing and stuff like that. So I was really surprised. I had no idea how big it was. And then once I found that out, like the Rockstar level happened. And then on top of that, like we found out, man, this is like even bigger than we thought it was. And so like it was even more hype on top of that.
All right, I'm glad to hear it. And I mean, it is a fucking fantastic track. I mean, it's so eclectic yet so energetic, and that's why it fits the game's ethos so well, because, a fast-paced game needs a fast-paced song, and Party Steady was that kind of song, which, makes it all the more sad that on the 25th of October of 2018, which is 10 years after the game's initial release, that the track would end up being removed in a game update. Do you know why this happened?
So my understanding of it is the license expired, and if they wanted to put it back in the game, they would have had to repay for it. And I don't know how many other musicians went through that, but I feel like it was an opportunity for them to either update the soundtrack or remove some of the things that would make re-releasing the game more expensive, right? So I mean, it's not like we got like that much money for it. So, I'm sure with Rockstar's pockets, I don't know whether the re-release had a specific budget, but I'll say that you're not the first person to wonder what happened to the game, like what happened to the song, like after the re-release. And a lot of people had a lot of good just interactions with that song playing the game. And, they didn't come back to us. They didn't ask our representation, hey, can we relicense it? The decision was made completely outside of us. So I can only speculate.
That sounds pretty trashy. I mean, being robbed of the chance to, have the track be reinstated, to be part of this game's continuing legacy. Say Rockstar came to you today and said, okay, we want to relicense this. You would give them the green light, right?
Yeah, I would. I have no problem with it. But also, I think having an understanding of, the music industry in general, and understanding that we were fortunate to get the opportunity in the first place, right? Like you said, we weren't Pac Div cool kids, right? We didn't have a lot of pull where we could say, this is what we want, or, you have to take this song and as part of the contract, you have to renew the license after 10 years. So for us, it was like, we're going to take advantage of this as much as we can. We sold some records, we played some shows. We still get royalties off of a lot of the work that we did. All that stuff was the stepping stone. It was like one of the things that kicked off, wildly successful lives, just maybe not with that particular project.
That's actually a really positive way to put it. It's still, of course, a shame that there will be a bunch of people who won't discover it, but at the same time, you have already reached so many people through your music. I mean, undoubtedly, hundreds and thousands of people were indirectly exposed to the song through the time that the game was up. So
you got to understand, this life, you only get one chance at this life, man. You got to take out of it what you can. So
amen.
I guess what made you take interest in, like the music in this game in such a way that you're like tracking people down, like from way back.
We actually ended up talking quite a bit about the music industry, a little bit more about MCLA, a certain ubiquitous musician, and a lot more. It was a great convo, and if you happen to want to see the full thing, it'll be linked in the description below, so you can like check that if you want to. But it's your choice. Hi, this is me, with better hair and lighting than in the interview. Well, my hair is not that much better, but you're always free to cry about it. First off, you might be wondering why there's a chair sitting next to me and why I'm not sitting on it. You'll never know, because I won't tell you. Second thing, I already forgot. I want to thank Kid Motherfucking Static for lending his time and doing that interview with me. For real, homie, I appreciate it. If you're into music production, please do me and him a favor and check out his YouTube channel. I will be linking it in the description. If you are interested at all in the topic of music production, just check out his videos. He has some creative stuff on there. He's been on the grind, man. He's been on the grind, and he deserves more recognition, man. Check it out. And if you like your alternative hip-hop, if you like your Dabries, your JPEG Mafias, your Def Gripses, even your Mad Villainies, your Injury Reserves, your Clippings, your Danny Browns, I think you're gonna like the shit he did with Yay Big. So stream that. Stream that shit right now. And Kid, when are we doing a music podcast? You got my socials. We need to do a music podcast soon. Hit me up. Oh yeah, if you like the video, that's great. I will be going now, because I've had enough of you N-words without the hard R. I will actually be physically leaving the camera in order to emphasize me actually going. So, yeah, goodbye. I'm done with y'all. Am I out of the shot? No. I should be out of the shot now.